Well, hi, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. It's Richard Wade, and I'm very pleased that you decided to come and have a look at our channel yet again. Thank you very much for your support. Before I start today's chat and bring on our two guests today, I'd like to make a simple request, please, if you don't mind, to have a look down below and click the subscribe button. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, please do subscribe and click the alert bell, and you'll be alerted when we do future discussions. What I'd like to mention at this early point here is that we're starting to get a lot more traction now on our YouTube channel, and we have a lot of views when our videos go out on LinkedIn as well. So keep yourself up to date. Do join us, do subscribe, do click the like and subscribe button, and you'll hear about everything that we do in the future. And we've got some great guests lined up, not just today, but in the coming months. We've got a number of interviews lined up, which I'm really excited to bring to you. So I look forward to you supporting us in that journey. What I want to talk to you about today, very briefly before I bring on our guest, is vehicles and the theft of vehicles. It's a huge problem. My guests are going to come on in a moment. They're experts in this field, and then we're going to introduce you to the managing director and the chief operating officer of a very effective, respected organization in this field, who will give us a rundown on the scale of vehicle theft and the solutions that they bring to the market that you can take advantage of. And I wanted to mention at the get-go, right at the start here, if you have your vehicle stolen, you're going to hear about the scale of the issue in a moment. It's a nightmare. It's really traumatic. From a rural crime perspective, if that vehicle happens to be your workhorse, like your tractor, parts of your combine harvester, your ATV, or your Hilux or your Land Rover Defender, you could have some real serious business implications and a lot of business disruption. So we don't just want our vehicle to have a tracker that brings it up on a map somewhere. We want a solution that will go and retrieve that vehicle or that asset for you. And that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. So without further ado, let me click a button. And appearing on the screen are two gentlemen from Trak Global Security Solutions. Let me introduce you to Dave Turnock. Now, for people who don't know who Dave is, Dave may want to put up your hand here. So Dave Turnock, director. Dave, hi. Thank you so much. And sat there by the side of Dave is Dougie Watt, the Chief Operating Officer from Trak Global Security Solutions. Really chuffed, guys, that you've spared a bit of time to come and have a chat with us today. We are recorded, so there's no interaction. If you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, it's a recorded version, so there's no live interactions. But I think what I'd like to do is welcome you guys and say thank you. And I'm going to bring up your little presentation deck here, so I think it'd be a great thing for people to learn a lot more about your organization rather than listen to Richard Wade like they normally have to do, which is not a pleasant day out. So if I bring up your little presentation, that sits clearly in the center now. And guys, tell us about yourself. Give us a rundown of who you are, who Trak Global Security Solutions are, but more importantly, what you do and what your aims are.
Okay. So Trak Global Security Solutions is now moving into its 15 year of protecting assets. I've been involved with the business since the beginning. I had a background in fleet and rental. So as a customer, I understood the pitfalls of rental vehicles, credit hire vehicles, fleet vehicles getting stolen, and the impact that had on lost revenue, time to recover, and just having an overall effect on the utilization of those vehicles. At the time, 15 years ago, there wasn't really a cost-effective solution to utilize on large-scale fleets. So I built a solution where we could rent large volume of trackers for security purposes and operational benefits into those fleet operators. Our DNA sort of stems from that sector, and how we became so successful was due to the single ecosystem that we built. So we've got hardware, our own in-house engineers who are all AVI accredited. We've got the software and for the customers to utilize. We've got a 24/7 monitoring center, and importantly, a recovery and repatriation. And having that full ecosystem under a single contract for a customer brought many, many benefits. So that's sort of where our DNA came from. The business has evolved especially over the last 3 or 4 years. We've sort of evolved into other sectors, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But we are a single ecosystem who supply large scale telematics deployment with all the associated services. So if your asset is stolen, we can deploy a quick recovery and get that asset back for you.
That is that's quite a differentiator, isn't it? That I mentioned in my little blurb at the start there, that typically you get, if a vehicle's fitted with trackers, I've had trackers in my cars in the past, and typically, correct me if I'm wrong, you get your vehicle stolen and then you'll know where it is, and perhaps the police will have an idea of where it is, but it's that going to get it. Is that the main differentiator, other than your brilliant service levels and all the rest of it? Is that a key differentiator between you and other services available, that let's go and get boots on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely, is Richard. I think it all stems from what happens at the point that you want the tracker fitted. In the rental and fleet sector, it's large scale installation programs at PDI centres, and having the correct engineering capacity and skill set to make sure when you're fitting 500 cars in a day on a PDI site, one, that you're not going to damage those cars and cause any warranty issues. So it starts there. What I always say for people who operate large fleets is that you don't want to build your own infrastructure just to manage telematics and recover vehicles. For one, it's not safe for your staff to be going out and facing the criminals who are stealing those vehicles. And secondly, it's not the police's fault, but they're under-resourced, and is vehicle or asset theft a priority for them at the moment, or for the past probably decade? No, it isn't, but it's getting to more and more organised crime, which is the police are starting to show an interest. So the important thing for us, absolutely, as you say, is that recovery and repatriation element, because if you report a car stolen 24 hours after it's gone, the likelihood is, this day and age, that it's going to be in a chop shop in bits, or it's going to have left the country. And what we specialise in with our 24/7 recovery is that the minute you are aware that your vehicle's stolen, we will deploy boots on the ground, qualified, professional, often ex-police officers, ex-military, who will go then to the location that the tracker is bringing and activate the recovery of that asset. If there's a scenario where it's behind doors or it's behind gates, we work within the confines of the law, and we'll call the police. But because we've got a stolen asset there and we've got the evidence of where it is, we get a really positive response. So we support the police in making those arrests and recovering those assets. So absolutely the differentiator is the recovery and repatriation. Like you say, there's a lot of trackers out in the market. There's a lot of telematics, and it's like any data, you have to have a meaningful use for it or act upon that data for it to be valuable. And that's what we do.
I think that's really important. And of course, the safety aspect as well, Dave, is so critical, because you mentioned organised crimes, gangs there.
Yes.
I literally did an article 2 days ago about a real successful police operation where there was £10 million worth of organised crime and vehicles. And these people are not nice people to be messing with. And you need a professional boots on the ground approach to it, who know when it's safe and know when it's more safe to back away and get the police involved. So that's a great starting point. I was wondering, guys, shall we flip into your slide deck? Because I looked through it earlier on, and I think it will set the scene. It will give everybody a good bit of info about you. So I'm going to zip it and hand the floor over to you, gents, and then I'll come back in with my questions in a bit.
So I think it's no secret. It's in the public domain. vehicle asset theft is higher now than it was 2 decades ago, and increasing. Although vehicles are more complex, they've got more security, they've got more remote features. There is a car stolen or vehicle stolen in the UK every 5 minutes, and the recovery rate for the police forces vary between 4 and 8%, which is a very, very low number. If you look at the statistics of what the insurance industry paid out in 2024, I think it was circa 1.6 billion pounds worth of stolen assets were paid out by the insurers. And then it comes down to what are the vehicles being targeted and why are they being targeted? So prestige vehicles, as I say, going back to that organised crime, they're a currency. Vehicles are a currency often now. You know, if you're going to move a £100,000 prestige vehicle or prestige 4-wheel drive straight out of the country, you know, that's a valuable currency for the organised crime groups. And then you've got things like high-end pickups. Are going out, and you know they're moving out into some of the Far East countries because they haven't got access to those vehicles. They need them, whether it's war zones, you know, or civil war zones, whatever the reason. There is a real demand for those. So we've seen a dramatic increase in the theft of those assets especially over the last 18 to 24 months. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, and this is where, you know, you start to see within the numbers, you know, there's been a 74% increase in vehicle theft over the last 10 years after a sort of a benign period in the sort of late 90s and into the 2000s. And whilst that number hovers around the 130,000 per year mark, the targeted nature of that is changing. So it's less about, you know, an opportunistic thief taking off your Fiesta or your everyday vehicle from the driveway and just having a drive around in it, and it's ending up in a Tesco car park or something, and becoming more of an organised in its nature. And as Dave was saying there, you know, the ongoing sort of geopolitical events that are shaping the globe at the moment, you can directly link back to the thefts that are occurring in the UK, you know, every 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We talk about the pickups, and we talk about the pickups and their destination being the ongoing issues in the Democratic Republic of Congo, for example. You know, where there's an almost perma war going on there. But you look at then other events that are shaping the world at the moment as well. You know, natural disasters in the United Arab Emirates that wipe out hundreds of thousands of vehicles, and not just in compounds, but, you know, of owners. And that creates a parts scarcity that then generates a demand. There's an emerging middle class in Asia who are expecting to be able to have access to those higher end and prestige marques, and SUVs being a perfectly good example of that. So they're demanding that, and of course they're crashing them, they're having them stolen. So guess what? They need replacements for them. And where are those replacements? Those replacements are sitting in the UK car park. So there is no surprise that, you know, these are destinations. And just another example, you know, the impact of the Trump tariffs in the USA, right? That's creating its own little microeconomy in the West Indies, where, you know, rather than source a vehicle that's been imported into the USA and had a tariff applied to it to then sort of export out into the West Indies, increasingly we are seeing vehicles that are being stolen to order and heading west around the globe and not east, because historically they've headed east to those countries that are affected by sanctions and that economic impact. We're seeing increasingly shipping containers leaving the UK and heading towards there and being opened up in the Jamaicas and whatnot. And it's full of Hiluxes, and you know, it's everyday consumers and customers and business owners in those areas of the UK that are being indirectly but directly impacted by this.
I think it. Go on, sorry, Richard.
No, I was going to say, carry on. That's fascinating. I'm going to come back to. I've made a couple of notes there, Doug, for further questions on that point. That's really, really interesting. But we'll let you guys carry on with your slide thing there,
sure.
and I'll come back to my notes shortly. Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate that.
So these are the stats that, you know, I alluded to earlier, that, you know, we've been operating in this rental and fleet sector originally for nearly 15 years. we track about 25% of the rental vehicles in the UK. So which is about 90% of the actual tracked vehicles. So, it's not cost effective for them to track. There's circa 500,000 rental vehicles in the UK. It's not cost effective to track them all, but there is pockets and risk elements on commercial vehicles and prestige and high-end four-wheel drives. And that 24/7 monitoring, as I said earlier, is the absolute key for the success, especially for a rental company. To put some context into that, the rental industry alone with what we track and deal with is probably in excess of 300 thefts per month, and we track and recover those cars. Those vehicles and those crimes never make it onto the police records because they just don't get reported. They come straight to us, we deal with it. It can often be back in their compound within 8 hours. So it does skew the overall UK figures, but it's important for that fleet operator to get that asset back and get the revenue again.
And of course, many of them are self-insured as well. So therefore, that's a reason why they don't hit the books. But if you equate this to the fleet and rental sector, and I say this with a huge amount of caution, being a bit of a soft underbelly, in so much as their stock and trade is to rent vehicles. If that vehicle isn't rented, it's not earning money. So if you think about their profile for risk, they have got to naturally take something of a greater degree of risk to hire that out in order for it to earn money. So our ability then, by working with tens of thousands of those assets, allows us to quickly build up a picture of, what is being stolen, what is being targeted, and increasingly what we're then able to see is what happens in the fleet and rental sector is absolutely happening in the insurance sector, Richard. There's an absolute crossover in a Venn diagram of these two things. If we see a spike in a particular geography of thefts, which we have done very recently, we can translate that almost in real time to what is then going to occur in insurance, and we can guide that insurer to say, look, it would be advisable until this thing is capped to just take more care over this particular region. And we've got stats and facts and figures that absolutely and unequivocally support that. I'll hand back over to Dave then just to talk about the how of that.
Yes, and I think that as we said earlier, then we sort of diversify the business as we saw theft increasing in other sectors, agriculture, plant, the insurance sector. So if you take agriculture and plant, fortunately, I've got a background. I'm from from a farming family, so I know the pitfalls of, agricultural theft. The difference when you get into that sector is, especially on your plant hire side and your plant operator side, is the value of those assets. You can be into 500, 600,000 pound assets, has a real detrimental effect on a business if that asset is gone or stolen or taken from a quarry, etc. So, and these assets are being taken and shipped out of the country quite quickly. In the insurance sector, I think they've always struggled because they operate under the, we have to report everything to the police. With that reduced police force numbers across the UK, they're often not actioned at all. If you were to ring and your car is stolen off your drive today, no matter what evidence, CCTV, ring doorbell, you will often be told, here's your crime reference number within 20 minutes, ring your insurer with that number. You ring the insurer, they don't have the tools or didn't have the tools for any intervention. You could have a check for that asset on your doorstep within 5 to 7 days because there was just lack of intervention. So what we've done is brought that intervention that we've been operating across the fleet and rental sector. We've brought that intervention into the insurance sector, the plant sector, the agricultural sector to say, if your asset is stolen, the first thing you do is contact us. Yes, you still need to go through the formal crime reference number process, etc. But the important thing is those golden hours to recover that asset. Because if it's during the night, it will be moving around the UK somewhere. If it's, during the day or all night, it's quite likely to end up in a container, a chop shop, etc. If we can get to that vehicle before it gets harmed, we can return that asset back. And as we move into these larger, more expensive sectors, agriculture, your plant, They don't want to check in the post. They don't want to replace that vehicle. They just want that asset back, which was earning them significant revenue every day. And that's what we focus on, especially across the insurance and the other sectors. OEM solutions, they're great. I'm not going to knock the OEMs. They've really evolved over the last decade, especially. Your remote access to the vehicles, all your new functionality that you can see on your app what your car's doing all the time. Unfortunately, the remote access has brought some pitfalls because it's made vehicles more vulnerable and easy to access. And there's one major pitfall with the OEMs on how they operate, which is that the security solutions are line fitted. So they're in the same place in every vehicle that has ever comes out of that factory. The thieves and organised crime organisations have quite a lot of knowledge, access, money, research and development, technology. As soon as they found one, that whole car park for that make and manufacturer is vulnerable.
Which you see in Jaguar Land Rover a few years ago, and then increasingly you're seeing in some of these Toyota type vehicles where they spot a flaw, they spot a weak point in the security
and they share it quite quickly on the forums.
And it spreads. And then what you then see is that ripple effect out across the country of those types of vehicles and models of vehicles being targeted. And that is one of the drawbacks of the OEM solutions.
And really important for the insurance sector. The insurance sector is in the spotlight for different reasons all the time, usually through the cost of premiums increasing. And these are the knock-on effects which affect your premium. It is down to the high frequency of theft, etc., the high value of vehicles being stolen, removed from the country, never recovered, no intervention. It all has an impact on the policyholder's premium year on year. So year on year, as theft increases, those premiums will continue to increase. And we're trying to work hard now with the insurance sector to give them that intervention and actually do the right thing for everybody who has to operate an insurance policy across the UK to reduce those policies.
Brilliant stuff. That's interesting. I just wonder if I could pick up on one point there.
Absolutely.
If correct if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing when people report to you pretty quickly, enabling you to deploy your assets to go and get stuff back. I guess one of the natural fallouts of that is when it comes to rural crime, the criminals often operate in an area. They move through areas and counties and committing crime as they go. I'm guessing your reaction process is going to highlight that, isn't it? Fairly quickly. Hotspots is what I wrote down here.
And one of the things we've set out doing with our recovery team is looking at that at a micro level, Richard. So you might have seen very recently that we've identified and publicised two particular hotspots around the country. Around the time of the August bank holiday, and more recently about the first week of September, where we saw a very prominent pattern emerging in two particular areas, one being Harrogate and one being around the Cumbria area. Now we can pick up on that and we can see that the cause of that, and we know for a fact that the cause of that was historical criminals being released on conditional bail and released back out and just picking up where they left off in the instance of Cumbria. But our then ability to pick up on that quickly because of the level of the data that we go down to and then publicise that is something that stands us in good stead. And it's great to be on a channel like yours today to then be able to sort of talk to your subscribers about their ability to connect into that, whether they're working with us or not. Let's get connected, and we'll tell you when we're seeing these kind of hotspots and almost allow you in real time to protect yourself from the minimum, at least, of knowing that kind of criminal gang is operating in your area.
The benefit of us operating across a number of different sectors, we collate all that information together, and absolutely, as Dougie says, we see the hotspots, the patterns. They're not always relative to a specific vehicle. You don't get a load of pickups stolen in an area. But we can get a pickup, a tractor, a couple of cars, a high-end four-wheel drive, and we can then start to heat map that, and we can see all that, and we can tell when criminal organisations are very active in an area. And for that, we can pass that information back to our customers and the sectors that we operate in. And in some cases, they might choose to heighten their security. They might choose to restrict where they rent vehicles or stop operators from leaving vehicles outside housing. Now, there's a number of things that they can do, but it only comes from collating all that risk information.
Exactly. And we you know, if we think about just this year alone, we've been working very closely with a fairly large insurer partner who's prominent in the kind of agri and light commercial space. And by thoroughly analysing their data, we can see that there are very clear hotspots where and it's not just like spiky hotspots where it happens for a while and then and goes away as the OCG moves on or gets caught or whatever. But there are very clear hotspots where town meets country. So again, you know, this talks to this soft underbelly where town meets country. The criminal gets busted or expends what they can do in that suburban area and then moves out. And you know, we could show you the pictures and show you and show you the patterns, but there are very clear hotspots, say to the west of Birmingham in the Midlands and to the north of London, where London reaches into Essex and Cambridge. You can see some very clear hotspots where in the agricultural and more rural communities, there's a larger degree of trust and you know, just used to typical behaviour that the criminals are exposing and taking advantage of. And by then being able to play that back to the insurer that we're working with in very quick, very close to real time, by the way. You know, this isn't months delay. This is almost on a kind of daily basis. And feeding that back in down to postcode and make and model level, you know, they can assert the risk profile. They can modify the risk profile and communicate to their customers to either be there or change their. But the ultimate goal being that, as Dave spoke to and you've spoke to already in the conversation, is that there's a utility component to this. It's not just about the theft of an asset. It's the theft of the asset that has the tools in it that is your livelihood. More or less 100% of the time we are working on behalf of customers or end users whose livelihood is tied up in that vehicle or asset. If it's not on the road, if it's not in their possession, they are not earning money. And, you know, it's our job as we see it to be able to use our picture, our combined picture, to analyse, monitor and warn of that to prevent that permanent loss.
You know, I think this all comes down to what we've talked about is recovery repatriation credentials. Richard, sorry, did you want to say something, Richard?
No, I was going to say I've been making a note. I've got a couple of points, Doug. I'm going to come back to those in a minute. That's a fascinating little insight there. Really, we'll move on to the repatriation slide you've got up there. Because this to me, you know, way back when we very first started talking, I thought, well, that's pretty damn clever. And isn't it just? So tell us all about it.
It's not really, Richard. It's not really. It's hard yards. And you know, it's about, I always equate it to the moment of truth. You know, if you think about any brand, any product, any service, you only need it when you need it. You know, the AA and the RAC are great examples of that. You only need the RAC when it's at the side of the road. You only need this when you've not got possession of the asset that you cherish the most. And it is impossible for us to survive, thrive, and grow as a business without being able to very confidently attest to that at that moment of truth, we will be there for you.
I think this is a really key part of the business. So we've had an exclusive partnership with W4G now for 4 or 5 years. An excellent organisation. They'd been operating in other security aspects prior to doing a JV with us and setting this Trak recovery up. And I think there was a number of things, especially from my experience of operating a fleet, that we had to look at. One, even if you're recovering from thieves or organised crime organisations, you've got to be professional, you've got to be compliant, you can't put people at risk. And so there has to be a process. And that's what W4G helped to bring to this recovery market. By having X police officers, by having ex-military. I think with the ex-police officers, it gives us that professionalism and that experience of dealing with these types of people. But it also gives us access to a lot of intel that a lot of other organisations don't have because of their experience from working in the police force and etc. and their colleagues who are still in that police force. But it all comes down to those golden hours. The quicker we can be notified to recover an asset, the better. And that, we recover in excess of, 70%, in some cases it's a lot higher of the stolen vehicles, but it all comes down to the process that we agree with our end users, our customers, to get them to understand we must be the first call. We're not the fourth emergency service. We're just the tracking company who has the full ecosystem and the resource to be able to react immediately to recover an asset for you. Yeah. And I think without this part of the ecosystem, we're not much different than any other supplier who operate in this.
And what's increasingly important as we move into insurance markets and asset-backed markets, which are more heavily regulated than perhaps historically, is that having that ability to be able to do what Dave's just outlined, but do it in an accredited fashion, do it in a way that fits like ISO standards and whatnot. And, we're proud to partner with the likes of the W4G because they actively seek to have that accreditation so that, that can stand up to any kind of audit that anyone would want to put in place around that part of the process. That this is not any kind of dodgy fly-by-night blokes with baseball bats. This is fully professional, working within the law, knowing exactly what the legal constraints or sort of regulations are, and having those relationships with law enforcement authorities, not just in the UK but internationally too, to know how and why and when to be able to repatriate an asset on behalf of us and our customers.
Conscious of our time.
Oh, sorry, we're jabbering on here, Richard.
Richard's not even.
I could sit with you all day, Richard.
Yeah, well, and I could sit and listen all day as well. Seriously.
Just quickly run through Trak.
Sure thing.
Richard asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trak Black is something that we've launched sort of in the first 6 months of this year. And essentially, we absolutely understand that not all fleets and not all assets and not all insurers will be tracked and be able to be in our sort of widened ecosystem. So the process that we've put together, the kind of proposition that we've put together is, well, look, just give us the details of your stolen assets that were otherwise unrecoverable, either historically or more recently, and we'll put them into our network. And in the course of doing other investigative work and other recovery processes, if we come across a vehicle that you've stated is on your sort of stolen list, then we'll bring it back as part of that consignment. And a really, really good example of that is we broke an organised crime ring in Poland in the last 8 weeks, and we were identified using one of our pieces of technology that the OCG had not managed to find, a sleeper device, which we think is the sort of silver bullet in all of this. It pinged in just somewhere in Poland, and on behalf of our customer, we went and we started the repatriation of the vehicles. Now, they were in pieces, but in amongst that, we found a Rolls Royce, a very, very high value car. It was a 2024 Rolls Royce, easily £300,000. Yes, okay, it was in bits, but the registration and the VIN were still in place there. And we were able to then track it back to the last known insurer, who we have relations with, and say, hey, did you know that, we thought it was lost. And we've subsequently repatriated that vehicle back on behalf of that insurer. And that's just a really, really good example of how Trak Back works, is that there's no, it's on demand, just give us the information, and it's all about the data and it's all about the intelligence. If you give us that intelligence as part of our wider investigative work that we're doing, we can potentially bring you back a benefit that you would otherwise have lost. And it goes to not just insurers or asset owners, but it cuts to anybody that has an asset that was hitherto lost.
Yeah. Well, funny that when I mentioned trackback, it makes it when I read through when I did my research, it jumped. I had a question about trackback, and it jumped out at me as like, oh, that's novel, that's different, isn't it? So, but you've just clarified the point. So these aren't necessarily customers of yours. They don't have your units in their vehicles, yet they can avail themselves of your services as long as they feed you the intel.
Absolutely.
The asset details, it's now on your radar, and
Yes.
And as part of the reciprocity of that, Richard, is that the added benefit is by being in that trackback network. You then whilst you're not necessarily a monitored and tracked customer of ours, you become aware of that intelligence that we provide on a regular basis. So you start to get that intelligence feedback from us to talk about where hotspots are, where where we know OCGs to be. There's a sort of monthly intelligence update that you can avail yourself to, and whether you're an underwriter, an insurer, a broker, or an asset lender, or a fleet owner, then you've got that added intelligence. It's just that one more little bit of armory behind you against what is an increasingly organized and sophisticated theft situation.
It's unbelievable. Let me just pull that down. Let's get us back on for now. I've got a couple of questions. I've been making a few notes as we've gone through. The trackback thing I find fascinating. I know other people will as well, because that is so different. You mentioned various figures as something stolen every 5 minutes in the UK.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why that's likely to change going forward into 2026? Because
I think, Richard, the police forces are now starting to link vehicle and asset theft to organised crime in a more than they've done previously. We work with some police forces and some organisations, and I know there's some specialist departments being set up around various counties now to deal with vehicle crime specifically, but more because of what it's linked to, the ongoing crimes and the other crimes related to that. Is vehicle theft, I think, going to reduce? It's relative. Over my last 15 years, I found it relative to a number of things. Economy. If the economy is suffering, you absolutely see vehicle theft and asset theft go up. I think technology pitfalls in some of the, or is it pitfalls or more the knowledge of what the embedded systems do and how they're fitted and how they operate, the more common that gets in the dark forums that the criminal organisations use, sort of drives that up. I know the OEMs are more proactive now than they've been for a long time in looking at better security solutions, key relay thefts, they've done a number of things to try and reduce that now. So do I see it reducing? Unfortunately, at the moment, no, I don't.
No, I think you're right. I think I'm inclined to agree with it. And I also made a note here against that question was it's a shifting marketplace.
Absolutely.
Something happens over there, Ukraine kicks off, floods over there, something happens there with tariffs. All of a sudden, there's a big opportunity for the criminal mind to go, new market, let's go and steal one of them and sell it over there or strip. So it's such a complex.
Yes, it is.
It's really complex, isn't it?
And that's really proven as well. Your point there, which is if you look at post-COVID, when there'd been huge global shutdowns of manufacturing plants and factories, and the lack of parts across all countries, that is what drove the initial increase in theft after COVID. There was no parts. We were recovering cars, and I'll give you an example. We recovered an RS4 from an industrial estate in the northeast, bizarrely, and they'd stole it from a rental organisation. They'd driven it less than a mile into an industrial estate. They'd taken 4 panels off that vehicle and left it. That's £100,000 vehicle. They didn't want the vehicle. They wanted 4 panels. Now, whether that's connected to a backstreet body shop, whatever it was connected to, they needed those parts and they couldn't get them. So they were prepared to take the risk and go and steal £100,000 asset to get what is probably £1,000 worth of parts off it. And that was really common.
And what was the stat we heard the other day that, you know, just post-COVID, Facebook Marketplace for car parts in the UK had something like a value of £2 million per annum. It's now got a value of £400 million per annum for car parts. Just for car parts in the UK. So that would suggest that there is no sign of this abating. And regrettably, as far as criminals go, when one door opens, or when one door closes, another one opens. You know, if the situation in Russia and the UK shut down tomorrow, there would be a situation emerging elsewhere in the globe that, regrettably, criminals are agile enough to take advantage of quicker than perhaps we can arm ourselves against them.
Yeah, they're very quick and and what I always like to mention during my rural crime talks in general is that we are foolish to think of rural criminals and criminals in general as little fly-by-nights, opportunistic couple of lads thinking, oh, there's a car I can nick. Absolutely the opposite. Same you mentioned, Dave, earlier on about the the vital and the massive cost of agricultural equipment.
Yes.
Good tractor, nearly £500,000, and that's now on the back of it's on in a container on its way to, let's say, the Ukraine or somewhere. Your business is decimated. And again, I just want to, from my perspective, focusing on the agricultural side of it. It may well be insured, but that's not the point. It's the downtime, the heartache, the disruption, and can you get another one within 3 weeks before the harvest is finished? You know, and you've lost a year's worth of crops. So there's so many different sort of things that people have to think about.
We had an example the other day that Dave and I were talking about ahead of this chat with you today, Richard, is that, we've seen a telehandler, a JCB telehandler go missing with a client of ours. And whilst that might be, I don't know, what did you think, about 50 to 120 grand in value, say it was new?
Yes.
Right, that telehandler is no longer in the location where it can do its job. So that agricultural business has slowed down as a result of that. It's less effective than it was the minute before that telehandler was taken.
It's even more important that, being a farmer, I understand, and we operate a dairy farm. The telehandler is there's 15, 20 implements on that farm. Without the telehandler, everything stops. You can't feed your livestock. You can't load your silage. You can't. There's so many things that stop. A farmer just wants that asset back within the hour, or it not to go.
This is why it's great to have an actual farmer on the call, Richard. This guy, this talk the talk. This guy walks the walk. We've done meetings with Dave on a tractor, Richard.
He's been at the dirty end of a cow on many occasions.
Absolutely. Yes.
All good. That's brilliant. No, but that real knowledge of the marketplace that we're talking about here, the agricultural sector, I think is really important. And I'm so glad you brought in your dairy and family farming experience, because you really do get it. And they're the people that I'm dealing with who suddenly wake up in the morning and they can't do bugger all. They can't do anything. And it might be for a week, and they've got to go and borrow it from their mates or whatever. And it's just impacts and disruption all the way around.
Sorry, Richard, on that.
No,
can I just add on that? There's another really key point to the agricultural industry. It's, the smaller, medium-sized farms are now disappearing. And what's happening is, the larger farms are now buying up the smaller and medium-sized farms. So you're ending up with what known in the trade as satellite farms, and which means you've got your main farm, but you may have bought 2 or 3 farms in a 20-mile radius because you want the land and you want the buildings. What generally happens is agricultural machinery and implements will get left at those satellite farms, and so there's more theft going on in that area. And it's with the farm, Richard, you understand agriculture. If it's a seasonal implement or a seasonal machine, they might not know that piece of implement or agricultural accessory is gone for a fair few months in some cases. And that's one of the things that we're trying to educate the industry in. You know, we've got solutions that don't need a power source from a vehicle and all that type of stuff. So you can monitor all your equipment and implements, no matter where they're left. If they're left on another satellite farm 10 miles away, and that's really important as well, because as we know, there's not a lot of security, although it's improving around the agricultural space in terms of the farms.
And it's that
very trusted.
It's that ability to talk with credibility about the protection of your assets. You know, we've talked quite a lot about the recovery of your assets in the event of a theft, but you know, the flip side of the technology and the solutions that we provide, it allows you to protect those assets and see where they are and make a call as that agricultural business owner to say, actually, do you know what? We're out of season. I'll bring those things back to somewhere that's a little safer, because I can see that, you know, that machine is 20 miles away. Let's just bring that back and make it safer.
It ties in well. You make some great points there, and it ties in very well with the messaging that we put out through our training courses. Is asset monitoring, asset tracking doesn't have to have been stolen. Where is it? Who is it? Yeah, is it safe?
Precisely.
And
yes,
and the ability not only to know when it's been nicked, but to know that it's where it's meant to be is really good. I think before we start to close down, I think we've covered all the main points that I wanted to sort of get across today, and I'll surmise it shortly when we're finished. But I'm thinking about looking forward. If I'm hearing you correctly, guys, you know, you've been around for some time, 15 plus years now, leaders in your field. How do you keep ahead of these criminal gangs? It must be a constant battle.
It is a constant battle, and on the point of organised crime, they run like a corporate organisation. They have a leader, they have CEO, they have an MD, they have an R&D specialist, and they often have access to more funds than a corporate.
They've got a tech budget, a development budget, a marketing budget. You know, it's in another world, these guys could have been pretty big hitters in the corporate world.
Big business people too, right?
Yes.
So we are continually evolving our products. We are, because of the diverse amount of sectors that we operate in, the high volume of recoveries, the technology that we find in vehicles when we recover that asset. We learn from everything we do. We keep a lot of statistics. We keep a lot of information. We look at how, we don't just pick the car up and go and dump it back on someone's ride. We look at how it was stolen, what was done, how did they get into that vehicle? Was it with the key? Was it without the key? There's a whole raft of MI that we keep. But ultimately, you also have to stay ahead of the different technologies, the counter technologies that they use to stop the technologies. And we're always looking at new software, hardware to overcome those issues. Brilliant. And you've got to keep evolving to keep ahead of them. They're fast moving.
You do. Because you're dealing with an adversary, as you quite rightly said, well-funded, well-organised, and very tech-savvy. So
and agile, And it boils down to two things in my head, Richard, is that it's about technology and intelligence. So technology, staying ahead of technology, and that is, you know, we have a number of technology partners that sit behind us, and that is literally daily conversations with those technology partners, feeding everything back to them that Dave just outlined about how it was stolen, when it was stolen, why it was stolen, you know, what was used, so that they can continually be looking at how they defend against those dark arts. And then the intelligence and using that intelligence, using that data. You cannot imagine the amount of data that a telematics device gives us. It's amazing. You know, it is. If you're into numbers, come and visit me, because it's like painting pictures with numbers. Seriously, and that's my thing. But the amount of data that throws off, and some of it's useful, some of it's useless. Some of it's more useful than others, but it paints such a beautiful picture of what is going on, and then being able to productize that, if you like, Dave. You know, something we always talk about is analyze that in a way that is useful and useful and usable for us as a customer. That is what's going to continue. You know, that is where we see the growth coming from, that technology, and always being out front with technology, and then the data that technology gives us being able to use it and then share it with customers, and taking TrackBack, going back to TrackBack as an example, being able to productize that in a way that our customers can do something with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating stuff. What I'm going to do in a moment, then, as we start to wind up, I'm going to bring on your website now. I just want to mention that very briefly, and then I'll give you guys the last word. And then I'll do a wash up. So let's just bring that into screen now, so people can have a quick look around. So first of all, as we go forward, anybody who wants to learn more about you as a company, as people, the products and the services that we've talked about, and many others that are detailed on your website, it's trakglobalss.com, and that's quite new, isn't it? That's different to I thought. When I went on earlier, I thought, hang on, that's changed, and I love it. It's pretty slick, and it gives all the figures and the facts and the figures that people want to know. So people who want to know who you're working with and your case studies, etc., can nip across there. trakglobalss.com, which is absolutely fantastic. Let's close that now, and then what I'll do, guys, you're back in the room. Any final points? What, if anything, what's the final message or thoughts that you want people to take away from today regarding you guys and what you do?
I think for me, Richard, thank you, there's a misconception that firstly, vehicle security and tracking is very expensive. Because of our benefits of the large volumes that we do, we have the benefit of having some really competitive commercials for organizations and individuals. I think whenever you're looking at tracking, it's really important that you look at the full ecosystem. It's only meaningful if you can activate somebody to recover that vehicle at the end. It's okay knowing where it is. Somebody's got to do something about it. And for me, agriculture, plant, insurance, rental fleet, that's the absolute key to them, is being able to recover that asset and return it to the policyholder.
And owning an asset, having an asset is like being in a casino. By putting some kind of security around it, you're upping your chances of beating the house, because you're going to get that asset back. And that cost-effective, very affordable technology allows you to beat increase the odds against the what we're seeing as being a very, very sophisticated, agile, complex, organized criminal network.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to put you out of shot now. I'm going to very quickly wash up. If you're able to stay for literally another 30 seconds, you won't be on the screen, but I'll come back to you literally in 2 seconds. So you're out of shot now. I can still see you in the corner. So in closing, what I'd like to say is a huge thank you to Dave Turnock and Dougie Watt from Trak Global Security Solutions. That has been really fascinating. I think what the guys have put over very clearly and very succinctly is that there's a lot of different tracking solutions out there. That's great. And if you want to know where your vehicle is or your asset is when it's been stolen, well, that's probably not so great. If you want to know where it is, and then you want someone out there getting their boots on, going to repatriate it and put it back in your farmyard or back in your field, well, that to me is a really good solution to consider. So getting your asset back is absolutely the end goal, really. So I would urge everybody, go and have a look around the website that we've just had up there, Trak with a K, not a CK, trakglobalss.com. Go and have a good look around. There's loads of different solutions available depending on the markets that you're operating. But in closing, don't forget, please do subscribe to the channel, leave any comments, click the like button, and we'll see you again soon when we continue with guessing the future. Thank you. Take care.